Take 3. Hey, what's up, G?
Zach G mixed it.
Hey, it's the art of revolution.
Push the masses away from the media. Every day it's a new distraction from what matters to me. And you get the public together to speak in front of the theater with a microphone dangling. Congress tied up and they hearing us like, hey y'all, I'm holding this microphone like a K-Dog. And with this AR, I kick the revolution way off. Today's the day, dog. They ain't like us, I'm quoting K-Dog. I'm from the days of face-to-face conversations like, hey, wait up. The fake is blatant, we ain't the racist. The claim is baseless, they taking face pics. The trade for information, take away your simple basics. The day-to-day Satan worship is taking place. It's your chance to speak your mind and probably your last time. Time is running out, we hustle every day for peace of mind. Cheap and grind, that's what I'm saying when I'm out here getting mine. Get in line, the time to make a difference is not. Push, pull, push, pull. Push out the evil and pull in the truth. I know you got something to say and now's your time to say it, dude. Like push, pull, push, pull. Push out the evil and pull in the truth. I know you got something to say and now's your time to say it, dude. Like
to another episode of Art of Revolution. We're sitting here talking with Nicholas St. John. He's going to talk to us about a bunch of things. We do have some videos coming up that we're going to edit into here, but let me go ahead and let him introduce himself.
Well, my name is Nicholas St. John, and I run an organization called Washoe Patriots, which is up there in Washoe County, Sparks area here in northern Nevada. And that organization will be 4 years old in January. So that it's grown. When we started at 30 people, a little coffee house, and it exploded to more than 300 people in about 6 weeks.
That's
and so it was a little unmanageable at that point, but it has continued to grow, and we're over 700 people now between our text messaging, our email service, our Washoe Patriots on the Rumble channel and Facebook and Nextdoor and all these places. So a lot of people are very active, and we've done can't censor the sidewalk campaigns because they kept censoring us, and so we took the streets. A couple TV stations did articles on us and news clips on us. So out here trying to reclaim our freedoms and teach people to prepare for the coming economic collapse, which we believe is inevitable unless President Trump gets into the White House again.
Yeah, you think it's going to be able to be fixed via politics? I think political figures have the power to fix the nightmare that has become the tyranny we live under. Even though it's not tyranny like a lot of other countries, our police and law enforcement agencies have become tyrants.
Well, they have, and I experienced that last Tuesday.
Yeah.
But at least with Trump in the White House, he'll be able to take the pressure off from the federal stuff that's just a nightmare for everybody. Can turn the economy around. He did that before. He'll do it again. Whether he reestablishes the constitutional republic, which is what we need, and cleans the swamp if he doesn't. But all politics are local.
Yeah.
We've been involved going to county commission meetings since December of 2020, standing up against the tyranny of the masks and the social distancing and closing businesses down and all that stuff. So, we still have to fight that. You can put him in the White House tonight, and it won't fix Washoe County.
Yeah, no, it won't. What got before we get too deep into a lot of this stuff, what got you started? What was it, the spark that lit the flame to get you out here to fight like you're fighting and to do the things you're doing? Because some of the stuff you do is bold. I've seen it. So.
Well, I started, so a little bit of my background in 2008. So I was living back in Wichita, Kansas. I was in LA for 15 years up in that, and eventually moved out of LA and back to Wichita, Kansas, where I grew up. And so, that was where I was at the time when the swine flu broke out in 2008. And so when I looked at it, something just didn't sound right. I had a good friend in Florida, Rockledge, Florida, where I used to live, and his neighbor had a 19-year-old daughter who had gone off to college, had come down with the swine flu. And when she came, all of a sudden she came back home, and 21 days later, a 19-year-old girl was dead.
Yeah.
And that made no sense to me. So, God has gifted me with the ability to look at things that, it takes a lot of people a degree to understand, and I just seem to be able to understand it. So I started investigating the swine flu, started looking at the genome and the sequencing of how it got where it got, and none of that was natural.
Yeah.
And so that was my first real eye-opening to things were not as they appeared, and they were manipulating things. And so that was engineered. It started in Eastern United States, jumped to the UK, then to China, and then back to the UK, and then showed up miraculously in a pig in South Central Mexico. Yeah. Okay, none of that makes sense.
No, you're absolutely right. Yeah.
And so I ended up writing 4 books on alternative health, and my latest is the Immunity Crisis in America, where I give people 10 things they can do without medication, without drugs, to protect their immune system and fight out against this stuff. So I was prepared when COVID came out. My first write on my blog, Unsick Yourself, was right on schedule.
Yeah.
Because we'd seen swine flu, and then we saw Zika and West Nile virus and Ebola. And so every 2 years this stuff shows up.
This.
Yeah, every 2 years it shows up. And this time it was mysterious enough, and it was blasted so much over the media that it swept up most Americans.
Yeah.
And I knew it was a virus. I knew how to protect myself and others. We ended up helping somebody who early on was sick with COVID with colloidal silver, and ended up 3 days later, they were all well.
Yeah. I can't, so I gotta put a disclaimer on
right.
everything. I'm not a doctor. I'm just listening to somebody who's had some experiences that nobody's giving you medical advice. Right. Unfortunately, we're not allowed to talk about things, whether they're true or not, based on whoever's pulling the strings behind the scenes. That being said, we'll say it. This is for entertainment purposes only. Just listen, though. I mean, there's different ways to go about things, and that alone is a huge problem to me, because we can't talk about these things openly on. I mean, there's some social media sites where we can discuss these types of things, but unfortunately on YouTube and some other places we can't. So that being said, we're not medical professionals. Right. I repeat, we're not medical professionals, but listen, there's some good information here. So it's funny you say that, because I remember when the Ebola thing came, I was sure. Like, I was positive there was going to be an Ebola outbreak in the United States, and there wasn't. But it scared the shit out of me seeing those people come off of those planes. And some of the people I talked to think it was all bullshit. Like, none of that was even true to begin with, But
it was, in my opinion, it was a glycoprotein virus, which is a very deadly type of virus. It's not like swine flu and the influenza and common cold and now bird flu and all those. Yeah. Those have an H and an N factor protein type. Spikes are on it and shells. Glycoprotein is a different animal, and it was very deadly. It was essentially, when I started doing research on it, I came up with a protocol to help doctors and nurses that were going over to basically the war zone of Ebola to protect themselves, because ultimately no one ever told anybody. They didn't broadcast this, but 287 doctors and nurses and medical staff died in the Ebola zones over there in West Africa.
Really?
So yeah, they didn't broadcast that, but they were having trouble getting people to go over. Isolation was really was one of the answers, and they did. But if you look at what they died from, essentially they were, when you see all these movies and stuff with people bleeding from their eyes and nose and ears and all that stuff, that's what's called scurvy.
Yeah.
And Ebola essentially, scurvy is simply exhausting your vitamin C or your sodium ascorbate levels in your body.
Yeah.
Humans can't make that. The gene that transitions glucose into ascorbic acid doesn't exist in human beings. And so the only way we get it is if we eat it. And so in the early days, if you remember your history, Magellan went around the world. Remember Magellan?
Yeah.
80% of his crew died
From scurvy. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's when a doctor in the Royal Navy figured out that if they would have limes on
for vitamin C, right?
Right, for vitamin C, and that's why they called the Navy sailors limeys.
Is that really true?
Yeah.
I did not know that. That seems like more like a UK thing. They're all limeys in the UK.
Limeys. Well,
no offense.
That term came around because he had basically prescribed putting fresh fruit on, and limes were one of those that he put on the ships. When they did, it still took 100 years after he did that and proved that limes would stop scurvy death before the establishment would accept it and then make that as part of their protocol.
It's funny that there's so many, that nature has a cure for so many things. It's true. It's really amazing. We have to go on White Rabbit to go really deep down this rabbit hole, because his podcast, you can talk about, anything you want to talk about. And the way he has it said, he's on Rockfin and all those alternative platforms, which I think all of you people should really look into.
Yep.
But you can really get deep knowledge of this stuff. I don't know. I want to say Project Blue Beam or some shit like that. I'm not really too familiar with it. I'm more worried about now than conspiracies from the past that have reared their ugly faces now. You get what I'm saying? Because they were conspiracies then, and maybe they're not so so conspiratorial now. But there's a bigger issue at hand that I think that, and we've talked a little bit about this, is that most Americans, especially since we have a special kind of government, we don't really even know who we are or what we are or how to find what we talked about, what we call remedy, and to restore their basic civil rights back to them. And that's one of the things Mr. St. John, or St. Nick, sorry. Well, St. John, sorry, fuck it. Excuse my language, sorry. I got a potty mouth. We'll edit that out. But he's out there fighting a fight. We're gonna talk about this a little bit, but let's start with what is a state national?
Well, a state national. So interestingly enough, a lot of people try to use the term sovereign. Now, I'm not a big advocate of using the term sovereign. Everyone is sovereign. Even the states are sovereign. And when they were trying to get the U.S. Constitution ratified, the states kept pushing back on it because it gave the federal government too much power. And so each state was sovereign. So you were essentially a state national from the state that you lived in. And so I usually ask the question, how many U.S. citizens were there in 1791?
Yeah.
Well, the answer is zero, right? There were none. So there's no constitution. There's no definition of U.S. Citizen. There were just state nationals.
Yeah.
And so even in the Constitution, there is a statement about state nationals and U.S. citizens in the same paragraph. And so they had acknowledged this position as a state national. And most of us have been duped into just accepting this U.S. citizen position. And we could spend hours going through the 1871 corporation thing. And there's, again, all of this stuff is documented This is not, something you can't go track down. It does take some effort, but in 1871, the United States was incorporated, and then all the states became incorporated, and then the cities and the counties. And so if you think about it, you'll hear about cities that are incorporated. Like, for instance, out here, I think Verdi is an unincorporated city, right?
Yeah.
So you'll hear that term. Well, most people don't think about it because no one ever explains it. But a corporation is essentially a fictitious entity. It's not a living, breathing person, but it's treated as a person for contract issues. And so everything in essentially law is contract. So if you go try to look up the Nevada statutes, you won't find Nevada statutes. You will only find Nevada revised statutes. Because in 1871, all of the statutes that we had been under since 1864, when we became a state, had to be revised. And the reason they were revised was because it then had to conform to contract law. And so everything is about contract. So one of the things that I don't know if we'll touch base on it, but just real quick, as an American national and learning about this stuff, I took my car out of commerce. And
me too.
And the U.S. Supreme Court has ruled that a right, which we all have a right to travel on public roadways. So before there was motorized vehicles or anything, there was, wagons and all, horses and all that stuff. Well, they didn't have to be licensed for any of that stuff. And what they've done is they've duped us into thinking that we had to exchange our right for privilege. And so when you get a driver's license, that license says, I agree to exchanging my right for a privilege. And so if you're under a privilege, they can take your privilege from you. They can manipulate you. They can coerce you. They can force you to do things that you would not have normally had to do had you have stayed under your rights. And they basically trick us into it. Oh, you have to get your car licensed. You have to register it. Right.
Yeah.
And so I let my car registration lapse because I wasn't in commerce.
Yeah.
So all of this is about commerce. And even though I indicated that it was a private vehicle, I'm not under commerce, did not keep them from eventually towing my car and impounding it.
Which was illegal as fuck.
Yeah.
Or excuse me, sorry. I promised him I'd watch my cussing. I promised my Aunt Judy too, so she's gonna be super upset with me because I keep dropping the F-bomb. Sorry, Aunt Judy. Sorry, Nick. I'm getting better.
Okay, so they didn't have a warrant. We asked them, why are you taking my car? And they said, because we can.
What real quick before we go into that, what is the US? Most people don't know most people, if you pull out a map of the world, can't point out the US. So where is that? Just so you know, you're a citizen of the US. You're a US citizen. So what are you a citizen of?
Well, you could be a citizen of two different entities. One is the geographical United States. So all 50 states, you can be a citizen of that geographical entity. But there's also, you could be a citizen of the United States Corporation, which, by the way, is a 10 square mile area in Washington, D.C.
Yes.
So if you don't live in D.C., technically, and there's guys who teach this, I can't remember his name, but I think he's Freedom Law Center, teaches about if you're not in that 10 square mile area, he says you don't have to pay taxes, which apparently he's teaching that and has successfully gotten people to push back on the IRS about whether they should do that or not.
That's absolutely true. And if you're a U.S. citizen and you live in Nevada, then you're technically a foreign national, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. Let me pause this for just a second, Nick. I got this dog I'm going to have to Okay. So what we were talking about, it's okay. We got some filters on. It's just that the dog whining, you can hear it reverberate through here. So we were talking about what it meant to be a United States citizen versus a citizen of a state within the borders or territories of the United States.
Well, and one of the things that I want to throw in here. So each state has their own border, and they're responsible for the safety of the citizens in that state.
Yeah.
And so in Texas, Abbott, who's the governor, he started enforcing his border against illegals crossing over from Mexico.
Yeah.
And he has every right to do that. He's a sovereign state, and for the Biden administration to come after him and sue him for doing that is literally it's so indicative of where we're living today in this whole nightmare of tyranny and overreach by the federal government.
It's trickled down to local governments too, as far as what I've seen. And so Greg Abbott's a good example of what a leader of a state should be. And
absolutely,
here in Nevada, we have Southern Nevada, which is a population center, and Northern Nevada on the westernmost side of the eastern Sierra Nevadas up north. That was a mouthful, but we have Washoe County, we have Carson City, we have Douglas County, Lyon County, and Story County.
Yep.
Greg Abbott protects the rights of Texans. What is it about Nevada, based on what I just saw you go through? Why do they not? What is it from your perspective? Why are the citizens of the state of Nevada, or the Nevadans, not as protected as I mean, why do they let the kind of stuff that you see go on every day happen in Northern Nevada?
Well, it's regardless of who you are, Abbott just happened to be faced with a monumental task of protecting his people that brought him up to a place where he decided he would act as a sovereign state. And so I applaud him. Most governors have no idea what's going on as far as them being a sovereign state. Most people have never studied that. Most people aren't aware that what we did when we formed the Constitution, it was all about making sure that the federal government did not overreach. And we have overreach basically everywhere. All the three-letter agencies have never been approved by the all of that stuff, and yet here they are, and they've been in place for years and years and years. And so technically, because they are a corporation contract, essentially they could get away with it. But if you ever dial back into the original founding fathers' design for a constitutional republic, they would all have to go away.
Yeah.
And Lombardo, I'm sure he's just not aware of the power that he has. We know the sheriff in Washoe County does not. I presented to the Washoe County sheriffs back in, I think it was September of 22, that reasonable doubt report that I was trying to show last Tuesday at the county commission meeting. Those graphs that showed switches, and it was an unnatural progression of voting sequences, and votes were being switched from Marshall Burke-Bigler's race into Alexis Hill. Now, Marshall Burke-Bigler was the incumbent, and typically 95% of incumbents get reelected. So here she is incumbent. We're in the throes of COVID. Everyone's voting basically by machine and mail-in ballots. And so it was a prime candidate for messing with and switching votes. Now, I hear people all the time say there's never been any evidence. Well, we produced evidence. We showed an unnatural progression where Alexis Hill they switched at such a rate that it built up a 45% lead for her.
Holy shit, 45%.
Yeah.
My language, sorry. I'm sorry about the words, but 45% lead is astronomical in American politics.
Right.
I've never heard that.
Right. And then it relaxed and let it dwindle to 35%. And then when it hit 35%, typically no one has ever come back from a 35% deficit. Marshall Burke-Bigler reduced 25% of that. So it went from 35 points down to 10 points. She closed it with only half of the race left to count, which means she would have won by 8 to 10 points. And so we presented that to, it's called a reasonable doubt report. If you go to washoepatriots.com, that's on the homepage. You go to Washoe Patriots channel on Rumble, you can see the explanation of it. And so we met with an undersheriff and an assistant sheriff, and they both said, we said, when we showed them the graphs, I said, does it not look like something's going on here? And they both said, well, it looks like something could be going on there. So that's all it takes, because the laws
Reasonable
state,
suspicion.
yeah, reasonable doubt, right? So the laws say that the public has to have confidence in these machines, otherwise they shouldn't be used. And so we went to the sheriff. The sheriff has authority to pull the machines. There is no higher authority in this county than the sheriff.
I want to clarify what he's saying right now, real quick. Sorry to interrupt.
No.
In your county, the end all be all is your county sheriff, who delegates his responsibilities and his authorities to his deputies.
Yep.
The sheriff himself is the most powerful politician. He has more sway over your county commissions, and the commissioners own our sheriffs. And you'll see it when we play this video. It's going to go at the end of this because we have to do some editing. But just so you guys know, at the end of this discussion, there's going to be a video played. The county sheriff is the end all be all when it comes to law and the enforcement and keeping of the peace, which is their primary responsibility, is to keep the peace. They, for some reason, instead of delegating his authority to his deputies in a reasonable way, he subverts and submits to county commissioners and people like Miss Hill, who are really the tyrants at the end of the day. Anyways, keep on going. We're listening.
So back in 2008, when there was talk about mandating a vaccine for everybody to make sure that we didn't get the swine flu. And so I had a number of people that said, Nicholas, would you take the swine flu vaccine? And I said, absolutely not. I said, here's the only condition that I would take it. If I was unconscious, face down in a cold jail cell, and they gave it to me while I was unconscious. The government does not have the right to mandate vaccines. And we're finding it out. There's stuff that's finally getting into court, and all these places that were mandating it are losing those cases right and left.
Real quick, sorry. Again, there's a few words we can't say on the internet, and one of them is the V word. So we call it the jab, sheep's milk, even though it's not a pandemic-based vaccine ideology. What you're saying, just the word will get you
censored.
Yeah, it's just like the R word or the SA, or we've been through this before as far as the book read that we're doing with Tanya. And that's in my personal, professional, unprofessional, don't know what the hell I'm doing opinion. That is disgusting. That's freedom of speech. So we got to watch the V word there. We can call it
I understand.
Sheep's milk.
Well, I was just back in those days, and this has been an ongoing struggle clear since the early 1800s. There was essentially insurrections of citizens fighting back against it. So it's been an ongoing thing, but that was but when I was confronted about whether I would or not, that's when my investigation found that even if the federal government came out and said, we're going to confiscate your guns, we're going to mandate a jab, the sheriff in your county can say, no, not in my county.
Yes, absolutely. The sheriff is the end all be all. People don't.
He has more authority than the governor does in our county.
In the county, yeah, absolutely, yeah. People don't really understand the fundamentals of a representative republic. Mm-hmm. They don't understand the fundamentals of what we call a constitutional republic. And since most people decide to be naive, we have to jump through all these hoops. Go ahead.
So anyway, that's how I come to find out that the sheriff had that kind of authority. I started that investigation back in 2008, 2009. And so knowing that and coming here, when I presented that information to the sheriffs, the under sheriff and the assistant sheriff, that was my recommendation, was that they pull the machines. And they said, it's arguable whether we have that authority or not. I don't understand what would be arguable about safe and free and fair elections.
Do you think the sheriff even knows the kind of power that they wield?
You know what? I don't know. Sheriff Balaam is the son of a former sheriff, which it typically is a little suspicious.
Yeah.
But you just don't know. I've asked for meetings with them and have been denied all my meetings. Of course, I've been denied all my meetings with the governor too. So it's not like I have any. I should have standing, but no one's ever given me the opportunity to sit down with them and talk about this stuff.
Okay, so public officials, right? They're public officials, just like a public park or a public courthouse or a public anything. They should be accessible by the public.
Right.
I get there's a lot of people. This state doesn't have a lot of people, and they should make themselves available to the public. And so from my perspective, since most public officials are hiding behind codes, policies, and statutes that they write themselves to insulate themselves from the public, that's cowardice. And since they do that, we don't have a representative government, and we can't reach what is public. And what if it's public, including an official? It's a public official is your official and his official and their official and our official, and they should be accessible by the public. As a matter of fact, I happen to know unequivocally and without a doubt that they just choose not to be, which is against the law.
Well, we call them public serpents, public servants. And, so I've been going to the county commission meeting since December of 2020. And Alexis Hill, I lived in her district, District 1.
Yeah.
And so she was my commissioner. And so I've been asking for things to be put on the agenda. Now, I don't have any authority to do that, but my commissioner has every ability, according to the rules and procedures specifically spelled out in 5.5. It says any commissioner may put an item on the agenda. It only has to be approved by one of both things. One of them is it has to be lawful. Another thing is that it has to be able to be administrated by the county. Yeah. So if they said, we're going to put in an ordinance or a resolution in Washoe County that everybody can just ignore stop signs. Well, that's not lawful. So
stop signs aren't even lawful.
Well, we're true. And don't even get me started on how much time I spend at a left turn lane looking at a stupid red light when nobody is even seen in any direction. Yeah.
I got the dumbest ass question ever. Since Nevada decided in all their wisdom to make all kinds of traffic infractions and everything below misdemeanor and felony, basically civil. Right. Why are the police enforcing civil law? And that sets a whole new precedent, right? You can't suspend my driver's license. DMV already their overreach on authority is insane. It's almost unspeakable and disgusting how much power the Department of Motor Vehicle has. Well, DMV, check this out. Running a stop sign is no longer criminal. It's civil.
Right.
You can't suspend anything. And Mr. Officer, did I commit a felony or a misdemeanor?
Who's the injured party?
That's the most important question. I wasn't going to go there yet, but since you did it, can the state, again, we're not lawyers or doctors, right? We're just two guys talking. I'm unaware of any law or lawful anything. I'm unaware of anything where it says that the state can be the injured party.
Actually, the U.S. Supreme Court has ruled that a state cannot be the injured party.
Exactly. So I'm right. There's no way on God's green earth that a municipality under any of its names can be an injured party, right? How can you have a constitutional right to question and face your accusers and
Right.
hear the accusation? The state cannot do that. The state's not accusing you. Somebody else is accusing you, and the state's taking it up. Whether the state's right or wrong doesn't matter, but it's not lawful for them to do that. So if you got a case coming up and it says state of Nevada versus so-and-so, okay, so you go into court and you say, okay, Mr. Judge, Miss Administrator, Mr. or Mrs. Administrator, I'd like to face my accusers. Who are my accusers? Who's the injured party? Well, the state is. So what do we do? Because they just willy-nilly can charge you with anything now, right? What is it that you think people can do? Because I haven't seen a whole lot of evidence that we can do anything to combat it, and it's illegal. It's not lawful or legal.
Well, again, when you go into these courts, they are, first of all, it's a corporate contract. Yeah. Okay. So as long as you understand that everything is commercial. So when you go into court, the state, which is a corporate entity, and you as a fictitious entity, all capital letters on your driver's license and your registration and all that stuff, you have entered into a contract with the state. So the state can assess fees when you're in breach of the contract.
Yep.
So unless you, so I don't remember where it is. I think it's, some call it a maximum of law, is that you only have rights if you assert
them, yeah.
those rights. And most people don't know what those rights are, so they don't assert them. So they just get hoodwinked. And so when your fictitious entity breaches that contract, they have a right to extract fees from you. And it's not just the you, it's the corporate, all capital letters. And so here's the kicker. So if you wanted to go sue Donald Duck, could you? Well, no, it's a fictitious entity.
Yep.
So if you tried to sue Donald Duck, you'd have to bring somebody in who's a living, breathing person to be held accountable for that. And that's called being a joinder. So if you're not going to be the joinder in a citation from the state or the city ordinances, then if there's no joinder, there is no one that they can extract that from. And I'm not going to get into all the birth certificate stuff because that's a whole nother can of worms.
We'll hopefully have them back more than this.
So if you don't, so what I did was when I was cited, I returned those citations. I didn't sign them, and I returned them, which shows I had no intent to retain. If someone serves you something and you retain it, then you are essentially acquiescing to entering into those contracts.
Consent, right?
Right, you consent. It's acquiescing. And so unless you say, no, I'm not going to. So in commercial law, you get a contract and you're given so many days to rebut.
Yeah.
If you do not rebut that or correct it in any way, according to commercial law, everything in that contract is assumed to be true.
Yep.
And so if it's not true, you have to rebut it. And so I returned it, and while I didn't end up pushing it to the extent of ended up in front of a judge to try to walk through all of that, I was in a very strong position because one, they didn't have, they couldn't bring an accuser. There's two basically courts of law. One is common law court, which is what our Constitution is based on, everybody, but we're not under the Constitution of the original United States territory. We now sit under a constitution, which is essentially corporate bylaws. And so if you're going to be a corporate entity with a contract with another corporate entity, there are breaches. And so when you go in, they can fine you, or they can say, here's a penalty for breaching that contract.
Do you people consent without knowing they consent?
Well,
it's sneaky as shit.
It's called acquiesce.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's like, so what about what do you know about the postal rule? Because I'm thinking about sending a registered mail to the Department of Motor Vehicles, giving them basically, because under postal law, or the postal rule, is contract law. So, and a lot of people, I think they miss this part of it too, is that you have remedy. be a contract law, the same law they use when you go in and you give your consent to pay a fine that you shouldn't have to pay. So I'm thinking, this is just a hypothetical scenario. So I'm thinking, okay, well, DMV, you don't have the authority to suspend my driver's license because I don't need a driver's license, which I don't have. So I have a right to freely travel as long as I'm not traveling in commerce in any way, shape, or form, nor am I transporting individuals from one place to another for payment. So you send that in, which is perfectly lawful under the postal rule. You send a registered letter, you address it to whoever's in charge of the Department of Motor Vehicles, for instance, and they don't respond within the allotted days. That's a contract. That's what he's talking about.
Right.
That's contract law, right? So you have a certain amount of time to respond and withdraw your consent if you don't know how to do it on the spot under any and all circumstances as far as municipal law goes, right?
Well, yeah. And so, a lot of us need to withdraw, withdraw from the privilege that we have been tricked into.
Yeah.
And there are ways to do that. I think there's forms that I found out in Nevada that you can turn in that essentially cancels your driver's license, and you can notify them, the DMV. By the way, the very term DMV, Department of Motor Vehicle.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've probably covered this before, but a motor vehicle by definition is as a motorized vehicle that's being used for commerce.
Yeah. It's not an automobile, right?
No, yeah, car and automobile, truck, any of that stuff. That's just and they're very specific.
Legalese.
Well, yeah, they're very specific about
Yeah.
the terms they use. They use them on purpose. And so what I have done with the 5 county commissioners is that they have an oath of office. An oath of office is an offer.
Here we go. Hold on one second. Don't go further. So this is one of the major things I want everybody here to listen to. And we're going to go deep into the oath of office thing, right? Let me try to get, before we go into this, I'm going to try to get El Gato Grande down here to sit in this chair and talk with you a little bit about what we're doing and bring some of this paperwork so people can start to understand how you can go back, because you entered into contracts without the specific, you sign documents not reading them, right? So you don't know what contract you sign into. However, there is a way that you can withdraw your consent and opt out of those contracts.
Correct.
Let's take a 3-minute break. Let me get him. We had to take a little quick break right there. So we're heading down some territory that we're going to head down in a different episode of this same podcast. But what I really want to talk about is throughout America. And one of the things that you're really working on, and he has, he has receipts too, is that every public official, I don't know, is it elected or not elected? Or is it just period?
Well, it depends on what you're asking. So in NRS code, the Nevada revised statute 282.010 is the state revised statute that indicates who should have an oath and a bond.
And so and this is a federal guideline. So every state has a similar statute in place, right?
Yep.
So say, let's go to, we'll call it Kentucky-ish, right? Somewhere out that way. And your judges and public officials are in office, sitting on a bench as an elected official. What is it that they are required to do based on this? We'll just call it a nationwide thing, right? So NRS 2.010.
282.010.
282.
So what that specifically says here, which it's pretty much across the board, and I'll explain the bond, because a lot of people don't understand the bonds. But in the NRS code, it says all officers, legislators, administrators, and judges are to have an oath of office and a bond. And here's where it gets tricky: when required by law. Now, when is a time statement. So if I say, Tommy, when are you coming over for dinner?
Yeah.
We're past if you're coming for dinner. You're already coming for dinner, right?
Yep.
Now it's an if statement. And in the NRS code, other than the state senators and the state assembly, they're the only ones in that NRS code, and I think it's paragraph 2 of 010, that says that state senators and assembly are exempt from having a bond. And so that sets the precedence in 282 that is talking about bonds and oaths. So everyone's supposed to have an oath. So the oath is the swearing of that they will uphold the U.S. and the Nevada Constitution.
Yeah.
They'll do the best job they can, and in the end, it always ends with "So help me God."
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So when that's done, when they say "So help me God," that puts them under the highest level of spiritual law, and
which is what America's based on, right?
Exactly right.
Yeah.
And so while they may get away with not doing their job here, they have sworn an oath under, to God that they would do these things, and they're not doing them. So ultimately, God will let God be God, and we'll let him take care of the people who've sworn an oath to him that didn't uphold the oath to him.
Yeah. And we'll hold them accountable here.
As much as we can. Yes.
Yeah.
So everyone has to swear an oath. It's spelled out in all of the NRS codes, and including even for the grand jury, there's an NRS code, what is it, 172.085, that says, I, grand juror, will diligently inquire into and true presentment make on all crimes against the state or are triable in the district, and that we can get evidence for. So everybody that is in an official capacity, and by the way, the grand jury is literally, it's a fourth branch of government. They are separate from from the other three, and there was a ruling 6-3 Williams versus United States in 1992 that the late Justice Antonin Scalia wrote the opinion, essentially resetting everything about how the grand jury is supposed to function in our country.
So before we get into that part of it, and we're gonna have to, there's get down to as simple as we can. There's So first off, your county commissioner is required to have an oath of office and a bond recorded with the
recorder's office. Yeah, it's in the recorder's office. The county has a recorder's office. If you don't have a recorder's office in these what they call rural counties, typically it's filed with the county clerk.
So anywhere you are in the United States, the law's written differently. This law pertains to Nevada, but it all says basically the same thing. Yeah, from what I understand. So you go down to your county recorder's office and you're being prosecuted, and you got a prosecutor who's also a public official and a judge who's on the bench sitting in judgment over you, and they don't have a bond or an oath of office filed in their county or municipality or in the nearest county, whatever. That basically means that they cannot sit in judgment over you or prosecute you, correct? Or am I way off?
No, supposedly that's true. And so I had a couple cases at the Second Judicial District Court here in Reno, Nevada. And so it was suggested I go pull their oath of office. And so that's what got me started on this. So I went to pull the oath of office. I went to the recorder's office and couldn't find them. So I thought, well, maybe I'm doing something wrong. So I had the staff there look into it and gave them the names, and they couldn't find them. The ones that we did find, because we did find, I think, 4 or 5 of them, and they all had expired in January of 2021.
Wow.
So they're good for 6 years. So in 2015, 5 or 6 of these judges had an oath signed by, I think, then Governor Brian Sandoval. It was recorded, it was stamped, filed, and it has a number for being recorded. All of them now, we cannot find one single oath of office on record anywhere. We've checked the recorder's office. I put in a public records request to the county. They said we don't have them. Checked with the county clerk. They said we don't have them. They checked with the clerk of the court. They said we took them and we sent them to the Secretary of State. So I turned in a FOIA request to the Secretary of State. The Secretary of State came back not once but twice saying we don't have them. Check with your recorder's office. So they could be filed somewhere. We just can't find them.
It's supposed to be public, though.
Well, that's right. It is. It shouldn't be that hard. It shouldn't be a treasure hunt trying to find an oath of office
Exactly.
for a
This
judge.
is public information and on public officials. Remember, you are watching this wherever you're at. If you're an American citizen or an American or a state national or whatever you are, right? And your judge isn't following the law. What's that make the judge? That makes it so that the judge's rulings are just, I mean, 9-0.
Well, they should not. So the hard part is that essentially everyone who has been sent to prison is essentially technically being falsely imprisoned. And so do I want a bunch of people that are really guilty of a heinous crime walking the streets? No.
Yeah.
But listen, we're a nation of laws. And
Yeah.
that's been the thing about America and the United States forever, is that you go to other countries. I've spent some time down in Argentina. You go down to Mexico, any of those, the Central American and South American countries, most of their laws are just suggestions.
Yeah.
So
manipulatable, right?
Right. And so, here we're supposed to be a nation of laws, but it's been hijacked, what I call hijacked or usurped. And so now there are people who are deciding whether they're going to prosecute someone for it or not, or let them off, or make things up. And we haven't got into the thing, which we will later, of the things that were made up on Tuesday about me. So anyway, that's the problem, is that there's supposed to be laws. And so I think that challenging a judge, make sure you go do your research. And if you're going into court, get that oath, because what happens is judges are not allowed to make law.
Yeah.
And they're referees.
Yeah.
They're just referees. So there's two sides, the plaintiff and the defendant. And then what they do is the judge just says, all right, defendant, you're out of bounds, or prosecutor, you're out of bounds. Right. Yeah. And so that's all they can do. But we are seeing them kind of legislate, or they become more than a referee in your cases.
Setting precedent,
And so if you have your oath of office, get their oath of office, it will hold them accountable. If they have no oath, you can challenge that from the very get-go, because they shouldn't be presiding over your case.
And then, so we have the second district, second judicial district in Washoe County. How many of the judges sitting on those benches are have fulfilled their duty as far as their oath and bond is concerned?
I don't know about the bonds, but the oath, we have essentially first-hand testimony from the clerk of the court that they were administered, they signed them, but then they sent them off someplace and we have no idea where they are. So
that means they don't matter, though, right?
Well, right. And so, I tell the story. Listen, if you had a lien, so your company, you have a client and you did work for them and they didn't pay you, you can then put a lien on their property.
Yeah.
And so that's a legal method. And so they could tell you, Tommy, I'm going to put a lien on your property. If they never take it down and record it, it's never an official lien. So my question is, if you have an oath and it's never recorded, is it really an official oath of office on file? The answer is no.
Absolutely. And I would be curious to see, first off, if everybody across the country, right, started talking about this, going down and finding this information, because also their oath of office is part of their accountability as well as their bond, right? They swear an oath that they're in violation of their oath you can hold them accountable, and their bond protects them financially, right?
Well, actually, interestingly enough, now again, we're learning about this. There's no classes out there.
Yeah.
But my understanding of a bond, which I initially thought the bond was to protect the person who took out the bond, I am now of the belief that it's actually a protection for the state.
That's crazy.
So if someone sues the official, the bond will cover X number of dollars. And my understanding is the bond company can then come back to that person to recover that amount. But anything above that ends up going to the state because these are state officials. And so, while I've not, I don't know how to confirm all that, but that's the understanding that I finally come to understanding when we're trying to find out who gets paid and who gets protected, that they are, this is literally, it's for the state. Their ultimate protection is to have these bonds on their state officials. And a bond, by the way, has two purposes. And at the federal level, it's very clear that the two things that you need, if you're a public official, that you're doing two things. One is you're making policy. So there's a performance bond.
Yeah.
In other words, you're not creating policies that are detrimental to your constituents or people who live in your state. Second is a fiduciary responsibility. So if you make laws, or if you pass resolutions, or you have a number, so let's say there's 5 people on a board and 3 of you pass or agree and vote yes to accept a contract, even though that group does not handle money physically, they just wrote that check for that contract.
Yeah.
And yet there are people out there that are saying because they don't actually physically handle the money, it doesn't apply.
Yeah.
Guys, that's just a cop out. That's people hijacking the system and trying to make it see something it doesn't.
They've been hijacking the system for a long time, in a lot of creative ways like that. That's why all our police agencies are all militarized now.
Right.
I was going over this thing with Stuart Ante about, the Washoe County Sheriff's Department and the Nevada Highway Patrol were basically buying surplus military equipment, and powers that be were selling it and pocketing the money. And they find ways around it by crazy little shit like this that we don't know. I think, look, I know you're a Trump supporter. I'm a Trump supporter. I love RFK Jr. Anybody who's bucking and fighting the system like those guys are, I'm with you. I'm rooting for you 100%. The one thing where now this is blanket coverage across the board, I think, and Trump is like, he's for it. I think qualified immunity or immunity in general for police officers, judges, and prosecutors. If you're that righteous, you shouldn't need protection like this because you break the law and because you swindle people and scandal people. You should be able to be sued if you're sitting on the bench without your proper documentation. That's, I don't know if it's constitutionally required or what. If that's illegal, you should not have qualified immunity. I think qualified immunity is what gets people killed. Like Anne Marie, her brother got killed. Nobody got sued. Nothing bad. Those cops should have been, if one of us did it, we'd be in prison, right?
Well, yeah, the qualified immunity thing, there's a lot of confusion about it because of course, the Supreme Court ruling for Donald Trump. Ultimately, qualified immunity is that
that was presidential, though, not qualified.
Well, yeah, but qualified immunity, it applies to all of them. So as long as you're operating inside of your oath.
Yes, exactly.
And upholding the U.S. Constitution and the Nevada Constitution, you will have immunity. You will have qualified immunity. But as soon as you step outside of those bounds, that then opens you up to personal. People can come after you personally.
And I believe, I'm a firm believer that the qualified immunity, the status quo has been expanded so far that what's happening. Same thing with Anne Marie's brother. I mean, the police agencies, the judges and the prosecutors, I'm talking about on a local level, right? Like I said, Trump's my dog, right? I love the guy. RFK too, like Tulsi. I love all these people fighting these battles because I know who they're fighting for, right? But to support the lawlessness, right, that comes with this qualified immunity, that comes with these people not having their oaths of office and bonds easily accessible to the public because they're breaking the law. They are knowingly and willingly and willfully breaking the law, and they should have no immunity if they do that. If you sit in judgment on me and I get convicted for a crime I didn't commit, and you don't have your proper paperwork, documentation and stuff like that all recorded in the way it's supposed to be, you should go to jail for that as a judge or a prosecutor or a cop.
Yeah. I mean, listen, the cops have a hard job. I mean, I would hate to be a police officer or a code enforcement or a law officer today.
Me too.
You're hamstrung from 7 different ways. You don't get support from our officials. They tell you to stand down, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
But there's still people out there breaking the law, hurting other people.
Yes.
And that needs to be
victims.
That needs to be there. Right. There's a victim. Those people definitely need to be prosecuted appropriately and properly.
Yes.
And in order to do that, the judges and everyone needs to have an oath of office and a bond on record for us to know that they are in fact doing everything that they should do properly in order to fulfill their job.
Let me clarify that, because maybe I went off the rails a little bit there, because I got a lot of passion when it comes to that. I am not talking about all police officers or law enforcement officers. I'm not talking about all judges or prosecutors. I'm not talking about all public defenders. I'm not talking about all public officials. I'm talking about the ones that willingly and knowingly circumvent the system, and they for personal gain. And most of them rise themselves up into senators and shit like that. We all know most of the senators and congressmen are former prosecutors. But a lot of them broke the law to get to where they're at. And that's who I'm talking about. And, we don't have to get into policing today, but policing has turned into a form of tyranny based on the lawlessness. I remember when I was growing up, I'm a product of I was born in the 80s, grew up in the 90s when everybody was at war with each other from whatever neighborhood you were in, at least where I grew up at. And the cops were different. Their job wasn't just to arrest you so they can put you in front of somebody who's breaking the law. And I don't even think the police know, really, to be honest. I don't think they know a lot of the stuff we're talking about. It's our job to educate any of them that are willing to listen. And I know, I don't think around here a lot of the police officers are interested, but I know a lot of other places they are. And they're starting to wake up and realize, hey, man, there was I can't remember his name. He was a sheriff. He said, I'm the only recipient of the greatest award that the state of Arizona could give to me. I've been fired from every police station I've worked at. And what he said is, he's like, so one day he's out there giving this speech. He's running for sheriff or doing whatever he's doing in an old folks home. And this old guy sits down and he's like, did you swear to uphold did you swear an oath to uphold the Constitution? Da, 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 da. He's like, well, yeah, I sure did that. I did. And then the guy says, well, what's the Sixth Amendment? He goes, what's the Fourth Amendment? I don't know. What's the Second Amendment? I know that one. And the Fifth too. Well, what's the First Amendment? Oh, well, I think it's freedom of the press. But I mean, there's so much. They go through a 6-week training camp and they don't know this. And I think that there's a lot of people out there that are starting to wake up, a lot of police officers especially. And I'm telling you, I came from the other side of the tracks. We need you guys to be a part of the people again and not a part of the establishment. We need you guys to show up and show out and protect the people from the establishment based on the oath that you took.
Amen.
And and I think everybody, most people appreciate police officers in whatever capacity at one point in their life. You know, so I'm not intentionally just knocking law enforcement. I'm more looking at the officials, the people that are running the agencies and letting their officers out there not knowing that people have constitutional rights.
Well, speaking of constitutional rights, I touched on grand jury a little bit ago.
Yeah.
The Fifth Amendment says that no one shall be tried except by presentment of an indictment by a grand jury.
Yes. Go into that. I'm going to look something up, because we talked about this on the phone last night, and you had some profound, epic things that you were saying to me on the phone. Get in. I'm going to look into this NRS thing about that we talked about as well, about immediate magistrate. So go ahead and get with that. Let me look this up real fast.
Well, here's what's interesting. So we started reviewing the statutes here in Nevada, and section or NRS Code 6, Chapter 6, is all about impaneling the grand juries.
Yep.
So there are 16 counties in Carson City, but I'm going to call it a county because it's just too much trouble to keep saying what it is. But there's 17 of these state subdivisions, I'll just call them counties, in Nevada. So of the 17, the NRS code says that if you have more than 100,000 people, you need to impanel a grand jury every year. If you have less than 100,000, which 15 out of the 17 are less than 100,000, you only need to impanel a grand jury once every 4 years. And so when we started looking around and calling county clerks and things like that, they ended up saying that there were counties that we talked to where there were districts, because there's 11 districts here. That means there's multiple counties in a district. 11 districts, the two big ones, Washoe County and Clark, and then the rest of them are under 100,000. Of the other ones, several of them, most of them, have not had a grand jury impaneled in 30 years.
That's insane.
So does that mean that there was nobody in those counties that had anyone who raped somebody or child molestation or domestic violence or murder or any of those things? Well, that'd be ludicrous. I mean, even small counties once in a while have someone who goes off the rails and hurts somebody. Well, according to the Fifth Amendment, that person has to be taken before a grand jury and be indicted. Now, again, indictment does not mean guilt. In an indictment, in the terms of a grand jury, is that they looked at the evidence, and they could even call in a defendant. They could call in witnesses. They could do all kinds of things. They can do subpoenas. They can request information, all that stuff. And their whole idea is to look at enough of this to come back with what's called a presentment, a true bill presentment. And it's either an indictment saying we found probable cause, or what's called an ignoramus, which is kind of a strange term, meaning we didn't find probable cause, or in this case, we don't believe that they should be tried. And so an example is, let's say you're in a small county, Bubba. Bubba has been outstanding. He goes to church and he's got kids and he's been supportive of everybody. He's got a business and all these things. And he does something stupid one day, and it's just not his character, just something unfolded, things went south, and he ended up breaking a law. Now, maybe he hurt somebody, I don't know, but just for, running through a scenario, even though in a court of law, they say if you broke the law, you broke the law, period. In a grand jury, they can look at that and go, look, we're not going to destroy a man's life because he had one moment of weakness. Maybe he got drunk. Maybe he did, who knows the pressures of everybody these days. But because they know him, they could, in fact, render a true bill presentment of ignoramus, meaning we're not going to send him to a trial. And so that's the kind of power grand juries can actually, they are judges of the law. And so let's take a crazy, and although I say it's crazy, it's not that far-fetched from where we are today. So let's say that a bunch of liberals are running the Senate and the Assembly, and they're in the government.
A bunch of liberals,
right?
Get them.
And so they decide they're buying into this idea of depopulation. Okay, so just
Yeah.
stay with me here. Depopulation. So they actually enact a law. It's signed into law by the governor that they will forgive and not prosecute you for one murder a year.
What?
Sounds ludicrous, right?
Yeah.
But according to the way our laws are set up right now, they could do that. So you have a majority of crazy people in the Senate and the Assembly and the governor, and they could sign that into law. Now, is it constitutional? No, it violates your life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, right?
Yeah.
But it's now a law. So if you were to run the course, so someone kills your wife or husband or kids or whatever, and they're not prosecuted because the law says we're going to not prosecute you for one murder a year. Well, that's wrong. So you decide to take it to court. You lose. It's a law. You take it to appellate court. They say, yeah, you didn't provide enough evidence. We're upholding it. It goes to the Supreme Court. They say the same thing. It goes to the circuit court. They say the same thing. Eventually, it ends up at the U.S. Supreme Court. Now, how many years will it take to do that? 3, 4, 5 years.
Which
right?
is ridiculous. In
So
itself.
if you started with the state of California, let's say they passed that. In 1 year, their population could go from 20 million to 10 million.
Yeah.
The next year it goes from 10 million to 5 million. The next year it goes from 5 million to 2.5 million. So by the time it got to the Supreme Court, it was 3 years, and they extinguished 17.5 million lives because a law got passed and going through this system. Now, here's where the grand jury comes in. You take that to the grand jury. They rule that it's unconstitutional. It violates everyone who is about to get killed. And they rule that law nullified. It's done.
Then they go back now. Right?
And well, the only way it can get overturned is if it goes to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court has, their head on right and says, okay, that's fine. We're not going to let them pass a law to let you kill, 17.5 million people.
They had a 30-day murder in Louisiana. That was basically just exactly what you explained. And then when the people from New Orleans came to California after Katrina, they thought that was the same law in California and wound up getting locked up. It's crazy. If they don't charge you within 30 days in Louisiana, at the time, it was called a 30-day murder. At the time, if you committed a murder and they didn't have enough evidence to charge you within 30 days, they had to release you and they couldn't charge you for it again.
Wow. That's an interesting law.
It is not a law anymore, but that's why the murder rate in New Orleans was so high.
Right.
Because of stupid ass laws like that. And you're right. Impaneling a grand jury could change a lot of things, but it's not. They don't do it anymore. They don't. It's
been hijacked. It's been hijacked for about 50 years, and that's so that's what we're fighting here now. I have managed to get a couple of matters into the hands of the grand jury. Unfortunately, because of the corruption and the hijacking, they were not looked into. They were not inquired. Which, by the way, their oath guarantees that they will look into it, because the word is will, and it's a contractual obligation, not maybe if I feel okay, if it's I want to. They're compelled to do that.
So the next thing I want to get into is we had something happen. We're not going to be able to go full deep dive into it, but we're going to. I just want to skim across the top because we have some we're doing a lot of work on this video to get it out to you guys. And then we're going to also, once we're done with our work, we're going to have a round 2 with him, and we're going to go over this video step by step by step. We put a lot of work into it. We got probably 12, 13 hours into going through it 100,000 times to, see what we can do to make it easier for you guys to watch, I guess. But so we're going to be right back. We're going to talk about what happened to him on Tuesday and what's been happening to him. And I'm going to tell you something. It's disgusting that they think the powers that be think that we don't have rights. They forgot that we had rights. They sit up there above us, look down on us, and treat us like plebs, like the proletariat. I hate to use a Marxist term, but if you've read 1984, then you know what the proles were. And if you haven't, you need to read it.
Exactly right.
Yeah. So give me 2 minutes. Let me we'll be right back.
Okay.
So
we don't want you squeaking that.
yeah, dog 9. Stop.
Okay.
114.
Yeah, good.
So we took a quick break. We're back from it. What we're talking about here is Nick went to a county commissioners meeting, asked for some very simple things, and prepare yourself for this video because it's gonna come out. We got a little more stuff, a little more work to do on it, and then we'll sit down with them. But so tell us what happened. You went in there to do your duty as a citizen and have them there do their duty as commissioners, and where to go from there.
So what I did was, so I've been involved in election integrity now for a couple of years, actually more than that. Started looking at voter rolls and things like that, and then we had the 2020 election, and so I have a team of people. We looked at what's called the cast vote record. So this is the actual record that the registrar of voters actually ran through the computers in sequence. We have a number for every single ballot that was cast, whether it was paper or electronically through the machines or whatever. So we took that data and we did an analysis on it and found out that it looked very, very strange. So the first about 25% of the votes that were being counted were very linear, which is strange. It's not a normal progression. And so what happened was it looked like, so let me back up here. So one of the people I work with in the analysis sent me information on it. And the first 5,000 out of the first 5,000 votes that were cast, there were 77 instances that Alexis Hill, who was essentially an unknown up against Marshall Burke-Bigler, who was the sitting incumbent county commissioner. So an unknown against the sitting incumbent. In the first 5,000 votes, there were 77 instances of between 10 and 27 sequential votes in a row. 10 to 7, 27 in a row. And 77 of those instances that favored Alexis Hill. Out of that same time, there were 3 with a maximum of 8 for Marshall Burke-Bigler. So that was our first really big red flag. So then we started graphing it out, and it became very linear. Now, when you do this, votes go back and forth all the time. You don't see a linear line like what we saw. And in this case, it ran out to 45% lead in 25% of the votes that were cast in that.
That's insane.
And then it released, didn't release, it changed. Almost like there was literally an AI in the thing that said, if we keep it on that track, no one will believe that, because she would have won, 45, would have gone more than probably 60, 70, 80%. So it had to change. So they relaxed it and let it close to within 35 points with 55% of the votes remaining to be counted. Then it released. And then we see normal voting patterns for the last 55% of the race. So I went in Tuesday to show that. We had blocks of about 4,200, 4,300 blocks of votes. And so I started with the last 55 to show what normal voting patterns look like. And they have an overhead. So I wanted this published and out to the public. So I asked them to move the camera angle from the front to the rear so they could see the overhead. Of course, everything that I do, our Queen Tyrant Hill will do the opposite. So no matter what I asked for, she was not going to give it to me. And she did not want this information out in the public. So I had to stop several times and say, switch it to the back, refused. Eventually they chewed up a lot of my time. And so I had to blast through the first, the phase 2 and then phase 1. And these things line up on top of each other in a very unnatural way. So I worked with Dreza Smith and Jeff O'Donnell, and Dreza apparently ran the algorithm to find out how many elections we'd have to have before you would ever see that. Her algorithm stopped at 50 zeros.
So that's evidence.
Right. So essentially it said you would never, ever, ever in the natural ever see this pattern of voting. if you can't ever see it naturally, the only other alternative is switching votes in the machine. So that's what I was showing. So they ran me out of time. I didn't get to explain it. And I got done. The timer, they cut off your mic. So I left.
Yeah.
Didn't stay. A lot of times I raise hell after I'm done, because they steal my time all the time.
Yeah.
And so I walked away. I turned in the papers over to the county clerk. And then I walked up to the barrier wall. And I just stood there, leaned on it. Well, that did not set well with our Queen Tyrant Hill.
No, it didn't. And
so she interrupts the next speaker, stops the clock. Now they won't stop the clock for me, but they'll stop the clock because some guy's leaning against a wall that she doesn't want you leaning on. So eventually she told me to sit down, that I couldn't stand there. If I didn't leave, I was going to be removed. Okay. So if you threaten to remove somebody by force, that's a violation of NRS Code 207.190. That's the coercion statute. It is unlawful or a crime to threaten or intimidate someone to keep them from doing something they have a legal right to do, which I had a legal right to stand anywhere in that auditorium I wanted.
Absolutely.
And so only a tyrant will say you can't stand there, which is exactly what she did. So when I refused to leave, she calls a recess. And then they call 911. I called 911 and tried to do a citizen's arrest for violation of NRS Code 207.190, coercion, because she threatened me.
On camera, too.
Yes, on camera.
We got this, so you guys better you stay tuned because you're about to see it. So keep going.
So we went through. It took 30 minutes for 7 sheriff's deputies to show up for little old me.
Big ones, too.
Huh?
Big ass boys.
And so they questioned me, and I had all these people saying, they said, well, what were you doing? Were you disturbing the meeting? Were you causing problems? I said, no, I was standing there. He said, everybody, was they just standing there? Oh yeah, he was not doing anything, just standing there. So it's not a crime to stand someplace in a chamber and do nothing.
Yeah, absolutely not.
And so eventually they went off and talked to her. They would not. So I asked for a citizen's arrest. The sheriff, the deputies are supposed to take them into custody and then take them to a magistrate.
It struck me. I was blown away that they did not give a single solitary defecation about what you were saying at all. And everything that she said, they just were like, okay, no problem whatsoever. And she's, let me ask you this real quick before we keep going on the story. Her oath of office and bond are where?
They're recorded in the recorder's office. I have copies of both. Okay.
So she actually did it.
Yes.
So she knew she was going to be a tyrant from the get-go anyway. Then.
Right.
So, anyway, so what she did was unconstitutional and unlawful and illegal, which are...
And a crime.
Those are completely different things. Legal and lawful are completely different.
Yes.
Right? Just so you guys know, do your homework on it. Don't take it from me. There's something called Black's Law Dictionary. So she broke a multitude of laws, codes, policies, and statutes.
Right.
In front of a bunch of people who all stood behind you as witnesses and said, no, he didn't do anything. She broke the law. And then what happened?
So they went off and they talked to her. They were gone for a little bit. They did that in private because so when they call a recess, the DA tells them to leave the ivory tower.
Yep.
And so the 3 of them, Andriella Hill and Mary Louise, they did. Clark and Herman stayed on there. Eventually, Jeannie Herman came out and with a great big smile on her face, shakes my hand and says, thank you. It's about time someone stands up to her.
Good.
And so
who's Jeannie Herman?
Jeannie Herman is District 5, is a commissioner for District 5.
You see what I'm saying here? She's a commissioner sitting next to this tyrant.
Yep. Well, and Jeannie Herman is the vice chair.
Oh, wow.
And so here's what's crazy. So when you go look at this video, you will see that there are only 4 commissioners on I'll call it the stage.
Yeah.
Right. And so I don't know why Commissioners Clark and Herman don't take command of this, because Andriel had left. That meant there were only 4 people left. That means if Jeannie Herman and Mike Clark left, the commission meeting would be done because they
Yeah.
don't have a quorum.
Well, she under, from what I understand, under common law, when she abandoned her post, that means that her vote as soon as she walked out, or her voice was pretty much. I'm not saying this right, and we'll get back to this, but
Well, she doesn't have a bond, and so she should have been.
Yeah.
She forfeited her office
Yeah.
on May 6th of 2023. So
And this
she's been
was-
impersonating an officer, as far as I can tell by the statute.
This is not Alexis Hill. This is
This is Clara Andriola, and I've warned her, I've cautioned her, I've given her every opportunity to step down gracefully and make this go away. And the DA's office does not. They will. They've been running for cover, and conspiracy didn't cover up to keep her there.
And this is so she's the district attorney then.
No, the district attorney is Mary Canderas. Clara Andriola
Mary
is
Canderas,
commissioner for District 4.
Okay, and then the DA's, what's her name?
Mary Canderas.
Mary Kenders.
Yeah, she's a chief deputy.
It's funny. I bet a lot of people in Washoe County don't even know who he's talking about, even though you live there and you probably had a vote that you didn't use to get rid of these people, or you used it in the wrong way because you didn't read what they're talking about or listen. But so they come back, they go talk to the cops, go talk to her, and then they come back and talk to you. And then,
So when they came back and talked to me, my 207.190 wasn't even mentioned. The
Yeah.
coercion that my citizen's arrest. I believe that they're compelled to take her into custody and take her to a magistrate, which the magistrate could turn around and dismiss, but
they had to do their
they
duty.
needed to have taken her into custody. They didn't do it. So when they came back to me with NRS code 203.119. Now, 203 is about the conducting of these meetings.
Yeah.
And so you're not allowed to disrupt. So if you were up there yelling and screaming, waving signs and disrupting everything, keeping people from coming in, that would be something you could do that you should and could get arrested for because you're disrupting the meeting, right? It's a business. I was doing none of that.
Yeah.
And while the guy is reading off 203.119, there were people standing there saying he did none of that.
Yeah.
So they made up this thing a law saying that I broke.
Yep.
Threatening to remove. So they said, you have to leave, or we're going to trespass you. And so I don't know what made me think to say it or anything. Perhaps just God said, I need you to get this on record. I said, and if I don't comply, what's the problem? They said, you could be arrested and removed for trespassing.
What I saw is you will be, not you could.
Right, yeah.
He said, you'll be arrested.
Right.
And that's where they violated your constitutional rights.
Well, and so keep in mind, what was
Yeah.
my assertion? That she had threatened to remove me by force.
Yep.
And in the end, they talk to her. She comes back. They come back to me. And what do? They threaten to remove me by force. Nothing says I'm a tyrant like being a tyrant.
Yeah. Hiding while she was hiding. And I'm telling you, we got the video. It's coming. It's coming. It might come out with this. And then we'll like I say, we're going to go over this a bunch of times because this is a violation of not only his constitutional, but his natural rights.
Well,
Right.
if I was, and listen, I have done some things trying to get their attention. The week before when I stood up there, I called out to her, why don't you ever answer me? Now that was a disruption, but I left before they could do anything, right?
Yeah.
Because I knew it was a disruption. I was willing. I just wanted to get on the record. I wanted a statement, and because I've asked her and asked her and asked her. She never answers me. The only time she talks to me is when she's rebuking me for any number of things that I'm not talking at all. Oh, you got to talk to everyone on the council, right? There's nothing in the law that says I'll go up there and talk to whoever I want.
Yeah.
Listen, just because I'm addressing Andriola, that doesn't mean the rest of you have to not listen. I'm not telling you, it's a joke how bad this is. And we need more people showing up to these county commission meetings and holding them accountable. And so do I bait her? I do. When I stood up there at that thing, I knew that she was almost incapable of ignoring me and letting that run.
Yeah, no, yeah, she got on her high horse real quick. Do you know what her background is? Where'd she come from?
You know what? I don't know. I haven't done a lot of it. I understand. I thought maybe she was on the city council.
Mhm.
I thought she was on the city council, but I'm not sure of that. I think she may have just been an employee of the city. So I haven't done that, so I don't know exactly, but she was a city employee
Okay.
of Reno.
But I mean, obviously she's not, she's sitting up there making law or making law bend to her will and then being
Right.
supported. You know what? She, being a tyrant herself, turned those deputies into tyrants.
Yeah, right. Yeah, they did her bidding, and
Yeah.
they had, and I think that's probably the thing that bothers us the most.
Yes.
I run this big organization called Washoe Patriots.
Yeah.
I'm in contact with people across the country. We're helping people get prepared for when the economy collapses. I teach people about the Constitution, situation by situation. In this case, this was a violation of my First Amendment rights to just be there, and I could express myself by standing there saying nothing.
Yeah.
Right. So, but I talk to people around, and everyone, the number one complaint in this country right now is they keep breaking the law and no one ever gets held accountable. How do we hold them accountable is the number one question I get.
It's crazy when somebody says something that'll go viral in one of these commissioner meetings somewhere in the country. Everybody gets pissed off and listens, but none of you show up, and this shit affects your everyday life. They don't care. They're doing what's best for them. This shit is ridiculous and unreasonable. And I urge sheriff's departments across the country, not your local policy enforcement, and I'm not the biggest fan of any of them, but you guys need to stand up for your community because you're a part of it. You're also one of the most disliked parts of your community because of behavior like this.
Right.
I think the highest, even shit after 9/11, I think that they're at 51% approval or 48% right now. The biggest swing in approval was 3 points. Half of America is pissed off at the police and the sheriff's department because they don't do their duty, and they allow these criminal tyrants like Queen Tyrant Alexis Hill out of Washoe County to run roughshod over their communities. It's your guys' job to stand up for your community and make them whole. If they can't hold themselves accountable, it's your job to hold them accountable. And I don't know what else to say on that note. Police officers, sheriff's department, you guys want your respect back, earn it, because you guys are losing it.
And I was in Wichita for a while, and there was a time when people were going out on highways and freeways and shutting down the highways, right?
Yep.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
So in Wichita, to avoid that, they ended up holding literally town halls in the parks in some of the, a bunch of the neighborhoods. And that did, in fact, calm things down. We didn't have people out shutting down I-35 or 235 or, any of the major roadways going through and around Wichita. So they did the right thing, and they got out there and they gained a great deal of respect. And I gained respect for them for stepping out and doing that.
That's an honorable thing to do for the most part, but there shouldn't be First Amendment protected areas.
Right.
Which is, look, shutting down a freeway. If I was a police officer and there's a bunch of dumb shits, excuse my language, blocking the freeway and they got ran over, okay, well, that's your fault for being a dummy, right? But you can't, forcing people into a certain section just like they tried to do to you. You need to stand over there. Well, no, I don't. First Amendment protected activity is unequivocal. It's period. End of report. And we got a Second Amendment to protect it. People forget that you have rights. You have rights. You need to assert your rights, even if you wind up like him. Even if you wind up going through what he went through that day, which, he wasn't embarrassed. He kicked their asses. They don't even know they violated his rights, which brings all of them up, including the deputies. They're liable for violating his constitutional rights, And if anybody who listens to this and you're a constitutional attorney, I know a guy down in Southern Nevada that we might hook him up with. But if you listen to this, you're a constitutional attorney. You believe in what he's doing. You believe in what he's saying. You're a patriot at heart. I'm telling you, you guys got to stand up. Who cares if you're friends with the judge or prosecutor? It doesn't matter. Stand up and do what you swore an oath yourself to do. And the oath to the bar is BS, okay? Just so you guys know. You have a bigger responsibility than to the crown. Just in case anybody wonders what the bar is, it's the British
accreditation
registry. They swear an oath to the English monarchy. They're officers of the court, and for the most part, don't care about you. But if there is one out there that actually does care, I want to hear from you, along with any public defenders. That's who I really want, is a couple public defenders on here, and get them on. But we're in about an hour and 40 minutes. We have a whole video. We might do it remotely, but I'm going to try to attach it to this. We got to do a second. We'll do a second because I really think it's more important to go over this video step by step than anything else. So stay tuned, and we'll talk soon. One more time, where can everybody find you, your social media accounts, just across the board?
So we're Washoe Patriots, and Washoe is spelled WASHOE. WashowPatriots.com is our website. And then we have on Rumble is rumble.com/Washoe Patriots. You can find us on Facebook. Also, we're a group on Facebook, and we're on Telegram, and we're on Signal. To not find us is probably harder than to find us. So we're pretty much everywhere. You can sign up for our emails and text messages. Text messaging is how I communicate with the vast majority of the people in our organization. And we're movers and shakers here in Washoe County, and trying to show the rest of the country that there are people doing this. I'm not in this alone. I'm not a lone ranger. I have a lot of support. And there are people across the country very similar to who I am. Someone sent me a video the other day, said, "Is this you?" It was actually somebody doing something very similar, and very well could have been me. But I appreciate all the help and support. The Patriots have been tremendous, and you guys can start a Patriots group in your own area.
You could and should. And if you see a Patriots group, make sure do whatever you can to help them out. Donate $5. Do whatever it is that they need to help them out. I don't know if you guys have any donations pages or anything.
We do. On our Washoe Patriots site, there's the donations. We have Venmo, Cash App, and I think Zelle, and we still take cash and checks. So, yeah.
Remember that these people are out fighting for you. They're not doing it because they're selfish. They're doing it because they see something wrong, and they're willing to do whatever it takes to expose and hold those people accountable. And I have yet to meet one person that's doing it out of pure selfishness.
Yeah, there's a lot of other things I could do. I was big into pickleball, and I haven't got to play pickleball in months because I don't have the bandwidth for it anymore. I really need to be back out because I need to get some exercise, and it's a good release. But I'm pretty much living this thing 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So it's tough, but I believe we're winning. I believe that we're going to see some changes, but you got to get educated, and so that's what our big deal is, to learn what your rights are, and then stand up for them. When you're confident, when you watch this video, I had a lot of people go, "Nicholas, you're just so calm and cool and collected." That's because I know what the law is.
It took them a while to get there.
It did. Yeah. So thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. And again, one last time, I just want to tell all you guys, if you want to start something similar in your community, he told you how to get a hold of him. We'll make sure that all the links are in the bio or in the description, whatever. You guys need to get out there and start putting your feet to the ground, and we can change the dynamic. It's up to you. Thank you. Remember, God, family first. Dream big. Do whatever it is you got to do. Take care of your family. Remember what's right. Remember what's first. Art of Revolution signing out.
Take 3. Hey, what's up, G?
Zach G mixed it.
Hey, it's the Art of Revolution.
Push the masses away from the media. Every day it's a new distraction from what matters to me. And you get the public together to speak in front of the theater with a microphone dangling. Congress tied up and they hearing us like, "Hey y'all, I'm holding this microphone like a K-Dog. And with this AR, I kick the revolution way off. Today's the day, dog. They ain't like us, I'm quoting K-Dog. I'm from the days of face-to-face conversations like, hey, void up. The fake is blatant, we ain't the racist. The claim is baseless, they taking face pics. The trade for information, take away your simple basics. The day-to-day Satan worship is taking place. It's your chance to speak your mind and probably your last time. Time is running out, we hustle every day for peace of mind. Cheap and grind, that's what I'm saying when I'm out here getting mine. Get in line, the time to make a difference is not. Push, pull, push, pull. Push out the evil and pull in the truth. I know you got something to say and now's your time to say it, dude. Like push, pull, push, pull. Push out the evil and pull in the truth. I know you got something to say and now's your time to say it, dude. Like pull it together, get your notes and take a step up. The road to freedom always begins with a single letter. Are we ever gonna take a chance to get a leg up? The time to use your voice has arisen like it's the seventh. The first step is to let the people know you're fed up. The sword is quite mighty, but the pen will stick the neck better. Don't ever settle and constantly question your surroundings. Shit is always going down around you that you can't see. Thomas Sue and the art of revolution. It's time to spark a conversation and shock the institution. Fuck the system like Kama Sutra propaganda and mass confusion to take away your sight and then leave you blind to honest truth. Give me 2 fingers up, but fuck peace, I'ma see a thumb. Middle one raised up higher than your middle son. Little ones paying the price of silence is within us, giving us no time to react like Chernobyl incidents. Ha. Push, pull, push, pull. Push out the evil and pull in the truth. I know you got something to say and now's your time to say it, dude. Like push, pull, push, pull. Push out the evil and pull in the truth. I know you got something to say and now's your time to say it, dude. Like
Yes, sir.
Knucklehead dog, huh?